Hi, this is the voice, Michael Chavello. You're listening to the Premium Oddscast, hosted by leading MMA odds maker Nick Kalikas, fight scientist and author of Fightnomics, Reed Kuhn, and MMA journalist Brian Heminger. The absolute best UFC betting info, hits, statistics, and analysis from the most respected authority in mixed martial arts betting, MMAoddsbreaker.com.
Welcome to the Premium Oddscast, presented by 5Dimes and Countermove, your home for fantasy MMA. I'm Brian Heminger, joined today by leading mixed martial arts oddsmaker Nick Kalikas to break down this Saturday's UFC on Fox 15 event, which takes place in Newark, New Jersey. If you're unfamiliar with our format, myself and Nick will be breaking down the fight card from top to bottom, providing extensive analysis and a pick for each fight after doing our film study for the event. Then, fight scientist Reed Kuhn will step in and offer his expansive numerical insight on all bouts with sufficient data. Today, Reed will be able to contribute on 7 total bouts. Briefly looking back at our last event, our premium package bets for UFC Fight Night 64 went 1-2 to lose 3 units overall. We won our bet on Leon Edwards in just 8 seconds, but Anthony Hamilton killed our parlay that included Stevie Ray and Daniel O'Mielanchuk. We also lost an underdog bet on Jan Blachowicz. Thankfully, our 1-unit free bet the night before on Marcin Held from Bellator 136 was a winner, although free bets are not counted towards our premium track record. Back to the present, UFC on Fox 15 features an 11-fight card in total and will be aired on UFC Fight Pass, Fox Sports 1, and then close out on Big Fox this Saturday night. Let's dive right in. Now, kicking off the preliminary card on Fight Pass is a middleweight contest between Eddie Gordon, who is 7-2, and Chris Dempsey, who is 10-2. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I opened Gordon minus 380, the comeback on Dempsey plus 260, and right now it's Gordon minus 400 plus 325 on Dempsey. So a little bit more parlay action coming in Gordon's way and a little bit more support. And I'm not surprised at all. That's why line opened so high. And by the way, real quick, courtesy of our sponsor, 5Dimes.eu, are all the lines I'm going to quote from today's podcast. So check those guys out. And as far as this matchup goes with Gordon and Dempsey, you know, they're both similar. I mean, they both have a wrestling background. They're both, kind of more of your grinding type of style. But I mean, as far as skill set goes, Gordon outclasses Dempsey overall. I think Gordon is the better striker. I think he probably does have the better wrestling overall as well. Obviously, he trains with a better camp. I mean, Gordon has been training with the likes of, Weidman, the UFC 185 champion, of course, and even Gian Villante, which is on this card as well. So Gordon, has the better training, and I think, I mean, stylistically, these guys do match up as far as skill set goes, again, with their backgrounds. But Gordon is going to also have a little bit of reach on the feet as well, and he is the better striker, so I think you do have to sway his way. This isn't a great fight, in my opinion. I know Dempsey's not going to get a ton of respect, of course, because he did make his UFC debut at 205 and on the road, actually, so you got to give him a little bit of credit there against Latifi, and he just got destroyed there against Latifi. Now he's dropping back down to his natural weight class of 185, of course, and he's not fighting out of the country. So I think we're going to see a better version of Dempsey. I don't think he's going to go out there and get floored as quick as he did last time. I think he got beat by Latifi in like 2 minutes. So I'm expecting a little bit better from Dempsey, but still we might end up seeing the same result because I do think Gordon is the better fighter. I think there is more of an upside to Gordon as well, even though Dempsey's a few years younger. I still believe that, I mean, I know that knockout loss to the hands of Salmon last time was a little bit surprising to most. I mean, especially the way it happened with the head kick knockout. But overall, that is a concern with Gordon. I mean, his strike defense isn't the greatest. His cardio at times does tend to slow down, and he gasses like a lot of fighters do as well. But that chin is a little bit suspect in my opinion as well. But I don't see Dempsey winning by head kick knockout in this spot here. So I just don't see a true advantage for Dempsey at all. I could be wrong here, but I mean, from what I've gathered thus far, Dempsey's going to come in here and try to be aggressive a little bit, try to grind Gordon out against a cage and try to, you know, utilize his wrestling as well. I just don't think he's going to have a lot of success. So that being the case, I do think that, Gordon being a decent sized favorite is justified here, although it's tough as far as betting goes to lay that kind of price on Gordon, especially in this matchup, even over a guy like Dempsey. So my official pick is going to be Gordon, but as far as betting goes, be cautious on this fight.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on Gordon. He is the big favorite for a reason. Chris Dempsey was brought into the UFC as a short notice replacement up a weight class, and he got absolutely crushed by Ilir Latifi, who, on, second look was not an elite light heavyweight by any means. So he's dropping back down to 185, so he's at his more even weight class, more comfortable weight class, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. Eddie Gordon won the Ultimate Fighter, and while he's not the best overall mixed martial artist, he does have a lot of skills that should help him win this fight. He has a little bit of power on the feet, which you saw when he knocked out Diego Lima, and on the ground, he does have some rock-solid wrestling to take the fight to the ground and stay there. He isn't the most dynamic ground fighter. He's not going to be submitting or crushing opponents. He's not going to be destroying them with TKO ground and pound. He actually was very frustrating in his last fight where he basically just clung to his opponent and stalled the fight out. It wasn't very entertaining at all, and then he got knocked out by a head kick. So that is something to keep an eye out for. Eddie Gordon does not have the greatest chin. He does train very well with Sarah Longo, so I expect him to continue to develop, but he's 31 years old. There's not a whole lot of time for him to really become a complete mixed martial artist. Dempsey, on the other hand, not a whole lot there either. He didn't really face the best competition on the regional circuit before getting that UFC invite. He is a part-time fighter. I think he works in construction, although he was a D2 All-American wrestler, so that is something he can, hang his hat on. It might be able to help him keep this fight standing, but I just don't expect him to be able to do a whole lot against Gordon on the feet, and especially on the ground. I see Eddie Gordon at worst laying and praying in this fight and winning a pretty ugly decision. Maybe Gordon turns it up a little bit and gets a finish too, but my pick is Eddie Gordon. Now dropping down to the featherweight division, we have Diego Brandao, who is 18-10, taking on Jimy Hettes, who is 11-2. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Up in Brandao, minus 170. The comeback on Hettes, plus 130. Right now, it's actually minus 170 for Brandao. The comeback on Hettes is plus 150. So line margins basically tighten up a little bit with the underdog getting a little bit more value at plus 150 compared to the opener at plus 130. Overall support seems to be a little bit more so on Brandao, and I understand. I mean, he is a slight favorite in this case. And I mean, skill set for skill set, there's no doubt about it. Brandao is a very, very talented fighter. I mean, I have a ton of respect for him. I mean, obviously he's training with a good camp, with Jackson's camp as well, but he still has a lot of flaws, and that's a problem. I think, honestly, he's the type of fighter that you can kind of consider an underachiever. I mean, of course, he's the Ultimate Fighter winner, so you got to give him respect for that as well. But I think should have been at a higher level already. I mean, with his UFC experience and with his skill set overall, I think that he should be able to maintain a more consistent flow. And I mean, obviously, he got just destroyed by Conor McGregor, and before that, he got beat up pretty bad against Dustin Poirier as well. So he's coming off of 2 KO losses, and he's looking to rebound here against Hettes. And this, I mean, stylistically, Hettes shouldn't be able to get the KO over somebody like Brandao. Brandao definitely has a striking advantage over Hettes. He's going to have a reach disadvantage, though. So Hettes is going to have a little bit of reach. And I think overall, as far as aggression goes, because Brandao's cardio is a big issue, I think Hettes is a little bit more aggressive, even on the feet. Even if he's not as clean or he's not as effective, I think Hettes could be a little bit more aggressive at times. But obviously, the ground game is pretty special for both these guys as well. And that's what Hettes is going to look to do here. Is going to want to look to get top position, especially on Brandao, and try to do his thing. Because on the ground, Hettes is definitely a very talented fighter, no doubt about it. I mean, he's got an outstanding submission game. He has a decent ground and pound, and he can control the fight in most cases. It's going to be tough to do with a guy like Brandao, because Brandao is so well-rounded and underground. I mean, obviously he's a BJJ black belt as well. Very dangerous with his submission games. But the problem, again, with Brandao is he fades bad enough that I think after round 1, if Hettes can survive the initial onslaught, I think Hettes might be able to get top position and start grinding out Brandao a little bit as the fight goes. If Brandao comes in this fight peak shape and his cardio lasts him, I think it's a winnable fight for him for sure. I think he is probably going to win this fight. But I'm going to go out on a limb and actually pick the underdog here in Hettes.
And I just don't see it. Looking at these guys, as Nick mentioned, Hettes might have the reach advantage. Hettes might be kind of aggressive on the feet, but I don't think he's more aggressive than Diego Brandao. Brandao is a guy that is constantly just throwing strikes and has a pretty good power, has a lot of faith in his striking ability. He can get into slugfests, and usually he wins those. And in terms of striking for Hettes, he has zero power. I mean, Brandao has no fear whatsoever of Jimy Hettes on the feet. Pretty much every time that Jimy Hettes has been forced to stand in a fight, he has not done well. I mean, Marcus Brimage did a lot of damage to him on the feet before dropping down a weight class. And then Hettes wasn't able to get anything going on the feet against Dennis Bermudez, and then eventually got overwhelmed on the ground. So I really think that Hettes might have peaked at this point in his career. Like, he just is not well-rounded enough to make up for when he can't get a fight to the ground, when he can't dominate on the canvas. And Diego Brandao should be good enough with his well-roundedness and takedown defense to keep this fight standing and punish Hettes on the feet. Neither guy has a very good chin. Neither guy has great cardio, although I'll give Hettes a slight advantage there. So if Diego Brandao starts strong and can't get the finish, maybe Hettes could come in late and get things going. But overall, I think that Diego Brandao is crazy motivated to come in here and bounce back. And Jimy Hettes has not fought in over a year now, and that is a concern as well. And the one time he did try to fight had some medical issues. So I'm a little concerned about Hettes at this point, and I think Diego Brandao is going to punish him. All right, so my pick is going to be Diego Brandao. So Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag here. I mean, both guys have grappling credentials, but the numbers there are kind of a wash. You know, Hettes on his feet, you know, the fight's going to start on the feet. Hettes has been knocked down 4 times. Brandao has been knocked down 3 times. At least Brandao does have some power in his own hands. He's scored some knockdowns himself. But in terms of accuracy and pace, they're actually very, very similar. But Hettes should have a range advantage. He's southpaw. His pure striking output is a little bit higher on average than Brandao, but both these guys tend to hold back a little bit and counter people. You know, maybe they're trying to mix the fight up and not just be the pure striker, but for whatever reason, these guys are coming out numerically very, very similar, with similar defense and similarly below average chin ratings, although Hettes is a little worse in that category. So overall, both these guys, you know, in the long run, they tend to get outperformed by their opponents. So it's an interesting pairing. It's further down the prelims. Obviously someone will get the loss, and who knows if they're going to be around for much longer, but they do have grappling credentials. And so in pure wrestling, Brandao has better takedown offense and better takedown defense. And yet Hettes has just been a little bit more effective on the ground. He's controlled people. He's gotten the more dominant position. He's more aggressive with the takedowns. He attempts them at a higher rate. He's more aggressive with submissions. He attempts those at a higher rate. So there is a lot of back and forth here. But I will note this, when I try to boil this down to what's important, there are a few more check marks over on the Hettes side of the page, but I am hesitant. Either guy getting a finish really wouldn't surprise me here, given that these guys have been hit a lot. And I think Brandao may get a slight striking advantage just in aggressiveness, but Hettes, you know, could just try to turn this into a wrestling match. So a lot of uncertainty here. I do expect the lines to stay relatively close, but at the same time, I could also understand just going for an upset pick because it is that close, and there are advantages on both sides of the page, and enough for Hettes that he's got a shot.
Now moving up to the welterweight division, we have George Sullivan, who is 16-3 with 1 no contest, taking on Tim Means, who is 23-6-1. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Up at Means minus 155, the comeback on Sullivan plus 115. And as of right now, it's actually pretty ballpark. It's minus 150 for Means. Comeback on Sullivan is plus 130. So again, margins kind of tighten up a little bit here in this spot. And this is going to be a great fight. No doubt about it. I know, Sullivan might not get the respect or is not maybe as well known amongst the MMA fans out there as Means is, because Means is just one of those guys that you'd love watching fight. I mean, the guy definitely talented, underrated in a lot of cases overall, but people are starting to come around and realize what kind of fighter this guy is, and he just brings it. I mean, he's fun to watch on the feet. In fact, I mean, he hasn't really been outstruck by anybody as of late, even in the UFC. I mean, that's how good this guy is, and that's how much pressure he puts on people, and that's how much knockout power and ability this guy has as well at welterweight. So, and he's been, of course, bouncing back and forth between lightweight and welterweight, but he seems to find his groove, finally have his groove here in welterweight. He's a little bit healthier, a little bit more comfortable with this weight class, so that's why I think he's had some decent success. Overall, Means his kryptonite has always been a little bit of the wrestling, though, and being controlled by good grinders, and stylistically, those are the type of guys that have given Means problems in the past. And that's what a lot of people want to do to a guy like Tim Means, because again, he's not the type of guy that you can really outstrike or have a lot of success on the feet with. So you have to kind of slow him down by pinning him up against the cage or trying to grind on him, get him to the floor and try and control him that way as well. So Means a very legit, dangerous fighter in all aspects, but especially obviously on the feet as well. His takedown defense is decent, but still, again, against the high-level grapplers or against guys that are going to push a high pace and try to be relentless in takedowns, he does tend to struggle. Sullivan, on the other hand, man, I mean, this guy has been impressive. I mean, overall, since he made his debut in the UFC against Rhodes, I mean, that was a pretty impressive performance as well. I think Rhodes is the kind of guy, I know he's not in the UFC anymore, but I think Rhodes is a little bit better than most people realize. So that was a pretty solid win. And then to follow that up for Sullivan in his win over Rajao in his last fight, to dominate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt like he did on the ground was very impressive. I mean, he outgrinded him. His ground and pound was ridiculous. And, you know, that's exactly what he needed to do to put on an impressive performance and, you know, work his way up the ladder a little bit at 170 as well. Sullivan trains obviously with Pellegrino and Preux, so he's got a decent training camp and decent experience as far as coaching staff goes, and he's been in the game for a long time, and he's had a pretty impressive resume throughout his career overall. He's fought on, you know, some decent cards outside of the UFC as well. So Sullivan is a very game fighter. I think even though he's 34 years old, he keeps on improving his game. Now he's going to have more confidence. I mean, he's 2 wins in the UFC, and they've been pretty impressive overall. So he knows he belongs here as well, and he knows he can have success. Stylistically, this is a tough fight because I do think that Sullivan is one of those grinders and one of those guys that can push such a relentless pace that this will probably give Means some trouble in this fight. On the feet, Sullivan's not too bad. I think obviously, again, Means is going to have the advantage of pure striking, but Sullivan's game as well. I mean, he can sit there and strike with the best of him at 170. Might not have that kind of success against Means, so he's going to look to probably grind Means out up against the cage again, look for some takedowns, whether brief or not, and try to control it. But Sullivan is one of these guys that you kind of, as a fighter, don't want to see a cross reboot because he's so tough. He's so hard to control as far as takedowns go. And his pace is just so relentless. He's just kind of one of those guys that pushes forward. Even if you tag him with some shots, he just keeps on coming at you and you never shake him off. So that is not the type of fighter that you really want to see across from you. And I think that this is going to be a difficult fight for Means. I think this is another fight that realistically could go either way because Means is that good on the feet. And again, he's kind of catching his groove, and he's not the easiest to take down at times. But stylistically, I do think this is a difficult fight for him. So I'm going to go on a limb a little bit and pick the underdog in Sullivan. Again, it's a tough fight because Means is so good and so talented on the feet. But I do think Sullivan does have some ways to win this fight, and I think he might come away with a W here. So my official pick is going to be Sullivan over Means.
And I can actually see this playing out that exact same way. Tim Means is a very dangerous fighter. There's no doubt about that. He has a lot of power. He's long. Even though he used to fight at lightweight, he's still a pretty good-sized welterweight since he decided to officially make the move back up. And he is a very dangerous guy. George Sullivan is going to have his hands full if he decides to keep this fight at range and make it a striking battle. So I can see Tim Means cracking him. I can see Tim Means, doing some damage at space. Tim Means also has some pretty good elbows and strikes on the inside, as long as he's the one on the interior position pushing his opponent towards the fence. That's really how he did a lot of damage against Diego Lima in his last fight when he had him hurt. But George Sullivan is the type of fighter that really, he's not the quickest, most explosive or athletic guy, but he just gets the job done. You watch his fights against Mike Rhodes and then his last fight in Brazil, and he just kept pushing forward, kept putting pressure on his opponents, and got them towards the clinch and started working them over with takedown attempts, with strikes. He just kept his opponent defensive. And Tim Means is not the best when he's moving backwards. He really does need that open space and needs to be the aggressor. And I think he could get in a little bit of trouble here, especially if Sullivan can, get inside and into the clinch, in the inside position, start working over with some dirty boxing and get a takedown. Tim Means is getting better in that department, but I can definitely see Sullivan gaining top position, and then when he gets on top of you, his ground and pound is actually very good. I was very surprised in his last fight. I thought that he would win that fight by decision just from the pressure, but he actually completely overwhelmed his opponent and put them out cold from ground and pound. So he is definitely getting better. And even though he's 34 years old, he hasn't taken a lot of damage in his career. He has shown a really good chin in his first 2 UFC fights, really hasn't gotten hurt or rocked or anything, and his defense is actually pretty sound. So Tim Means is the more explosive and lethal striker, but I can see Sullivan taking him out of his game. I think Means expects this fight to be taking place on the feet in the stand-up open space range, and I think he's going to be a little surprised by the pressure that George Sullivan's going to put on him. So I do see Sullivan having a wrestling advantage, a top control advantage, a clinch advantage, and Tim Means is only really going to have that distance open space advantage, and I think that Sullivan's going to close the distance enough to take that away from him. So I see Sullivan grinding this out, potentially making it ugly, or doing some real damage if he can put Tim Means on his back or against the fence repeatedly. So I see George Sullivan winning this fight as well, so he's going to be my pick. Now dropping down to the bantamweight division, we have Takeya Mizugaki, who is 28-2 overall, taking on Aljamain Sterling, who is 10-0. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I opened Sterling minus 210, the comeback on Mizugaki plus 160, and right now it's Sterling minus 290 plus 245 on Mizugaki. So the action has come in on Sterling. Again, not really surprised because the buzz and the hype has been around Sterling since he really made his UFC debut. So he's definitely a popular fighter. He's a skilled fighter, but it was tough as far as setting the line over a veteran fighter like Mizugaki, because Mizugaki has been at the top of the division at 135 for a while. And obviously we know, most of us that have been following Mizugaki's career, how good this guy can be. I mean, this is a similar spot in a way to, I think when, they matched him up. Different skill set, of course, with, Sterling and Perez, but I'm going to compare this fight in a way to Eric Perez, where I think a lot of people were expecting Perez to come through and beat Mizugaki, but hey, he played spoiler there and he got the W. That was a pretty impressive victory for him as well. But overall, throughout his career, Mizugaki has had some pretty good performances. His last loss to Dominic Cruz, he got dominated there. Surprisingly how quick it was, honestly. I know Cruz is the man, and it's not surprising that Mizugaki lost, but still, getting beat like he did, that was a little bit of a surprise there. But that being said, he's going to have another difficult matchup here. I mean, Mizugaki's skill set on the feet, we all know, I mean, how capable he is. The guy is a very underrated striker. He's got some accuracy. He's got some power to go along with it. His hands are outstanding, and the guy has pretty good takedown defense overall as well. So he's hard to control, hard to get to the ground. He's got underrated wrestling offensively as well. So Mizugaki's a very complete overall fighter that has a skill set to hang with the best at 135 and make a title type of run for sure. No doubt about it. That's how good this guy is. So that being said, he's a 3-1 underdog right now to Sterling. So that tells you what people think of Sterling out there and what kind of skill set Sterling has, which again, he's coming from a great camp in Serra-Longo, as we were just talking about, a couple other guys from that card throughout the podcast. We're going to be talking about it. We were just talking about Gordon not too long ago, but, the Serra-Longo camp has really been producing some pretty solid fighters, and you know why. I mean, these guys have good training. They're well-rounded fighters in their own right as well. And Sterling is another one that fits that category. I mean, he has really good wrestling, underrated wrestling. He's good overall grappling, good jiu-jitsu overall as well. Decent takedown defense. To go along with it. And then offensively, the guy continues to improve his overall striking. He's got a little bit of reach over Mizugaki. He's got some underrated power on the feet as well. So he is the total package. I mean, we've already heard some comparisons to Sterling at 135, like the John Jones type of guy that first came into the UFC and really started making the run. And we know what he became today. I don't know if that's a fair comparison yet, but Sterling's definitely, as far as athletic ability and potential, he definitely has it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Sterling eventually competing for, the title 135. No doubt about it. He's that good. So this fight with Mizugaki is going to be interesting, and it's going to be a true test. But I do think it's a test he can pass. I mean, if you look at it, Sterling's fight, his last fight with Viana, that was kind of a test as well, because Viana is a very dangerous striker. Sterling passed that test with flying colors. He looked great in that fight, which again is going to, I think, go really good as far as building your confidence a little bit more. He's going to know that he was in there with, even though Viana definitely has some, some flaws in his overall game, still he's a dangerous striker. So that's going to give him even more confidence. It was a solid win on his resume, even dating back to his UFC debut against Gibson. We all know that Gibson is better than most of us originally thought as well. I mean, Gibson's a very complete fighter, so that was a very solid win. It was a close competitive fight, but a very solid win as well. So Sterling has a couple solid wins on his resume. He's only going to continue to improve. He's 25 years old, so he's young, a fresh fighter. He's got that desire and the hunger, and he's got the right team around him that have produced champions already. I mean, look at Chris Weidman, obviously from the Serra-Longo camp. So he's another one that fits in a line, and I think that can really make some waves down the road again at 135. So Sterling is going to be my official pick.
And I completely agree that the sky is the limit for Sterling. He is so talented and just getting way better and better every time we see him. And I think he's going to take a huge leap in development heading into this fight, because I believe up until his most recent fight where he had that win over Viana, he was a part-time fighter. He was working on the side. Now he is fully committed, and I think that you are going to see the absolute best Aljamain Sterling and possibly his best performance yet against his stiffest test. Mizugaki is a really good veteran. I've been picking him to win fights for a long time. Was having a bit of a career resurgence until Dominic Cruz murdered him last year. But I think a guy like Aljamain Sterling, who is on such a quick rocket ship rise, I think it's going to be too much for Mizugaki. Mizugaki could be in some serious trouble here if Sterling puts it all together. In terms of pure striking ability, I actually think Mizugaki might be able to hold his own here. I don't know exactly how much better Sterling has gotten in the last, 7 or 8 months, but potentially Mizugaki should have a little bit better boxing and could be a little bit more dangerous with his pace. But Sterling is so athletic, so quick, he can mix things up and have a much more diverse attack on the feet than Mizugaki, that he could outwork Mizugaki there as well, depending on his level of improvement. In terms of wrestling, Sterling definitely is the better fighter there. He is a very talented wrestler with great transitions, good takedowns. He could definitely put Mizugaki on his back. And then when he's on top position, he is brutal. He will pass guard, he will gain top position, and he will just start punishing you with strikes. You saw that in the Viana fight. He almost finished it at the end of the second round, and then he took care of business in the third round. Sterling also has excellent cardio, which is something that Mizugaki has relied on a little bit, wearing his opponents down. But I don't see Sterling slowing down one bit in this fight. I think this is a showcase fight for just how good this kid is, and I think Aljamain Sterling is going to come in here, and people are going to be talking about him in the top 15 absolutely after his performance here against Mizugaki. So I am all aboard the Aljamain Sterling hype train, and I think he is going to look incredible in this fight. So he is definitely my pick. Now moving up to the light heavyweight division, we have Corey Anderson, who is 5-0, taking on Gian Villante, who is 12-5. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight? And how's the public shifted things so far?
I opened Anderson minus 230 to come back on Villante plus 170, and the line has been bet up. At the time of the recording right now, it is Anderson minus 320. The comeback on Villante is plus 260. So more support coming in Anderson's way. Again, Anderson is definitely at this point the more respected fighter. I think he's got more of an upside as well. Villante, in a way, he's been, obviously a bit of a disappointment, an underachiever in some ways, because Villante has a skill set to do really well, especially at 205. He just hasn't really accomplished what he should. And Anderson, on the other hand, is one of these guys, again, that's kind of an up-and-coming guy. We know that he's won the Ultimate Fighter, so that goes a long way as well. And I think that skill set for skill set, he's definitely a guy that's constantly improving his overall game. I mean, he's more of a grinder, again, wrestling type of stylist that has a little bit of boxing that can be very effective, and as athleticism will carry him far as well. So he keeps on developing his ground game, he keeps on developing his striking game, and he pushes a high enough pace, and his cardio is really solid as well. So with the reach that he has on the feet, he's going to be a hard out for a lot of people at 205, and he's going to win a lot of fights. So Anderson, I think, is a legit type of prospect. He's still young too as well. He's 25 years old. And of course, he's surrounding himself and doing the right things as far as training goes. And I think he's really put himself in a good spot to continue his winning ways here. Villante, though, is a difficult matchup, even for a guy like Anderson. And again, I've just mentioned that it's a shame that Villante hasn't been able to live up to what most of us expected, because his skill set, I mean, the guy has some power on the feet. He's got good wrestling as well. He's got the wrestling background to go along with it. He trains a good camp. I mean, with Weidman and crew against Sarah Longo type of situation there. So he has a good camp supporting him. The problem with Villante is always that, I mean, his strike defense is a little questionable, but more than that, it's just his cardio. I mean, the guy continues to be a letdown because he can't go 3 strong rounds. I mean, he has the potential on the feet. He can be dangerous with that power. Again, he can't, a lot of people can't bully him around or control him, as far as wrestling goes, because he's got pretty decent takedown defense and the wrestling is there for him. But when you start fading and when you start gassing out and your cardio lets you down, then your wrestling does go out the window a little bit, and you're susceptible to being taken down and controlled a little bit more. So that's the biggest flaw for Villante. He has been knocked out couple times or whatever on his resume. I mean, it is what it is with that, as far as, the knockouts go. I mean, the official knockout, one of them was to Griggs, and that was at heavyweight. So take that for what it's worth. Villante, I think his chin isn't as bad as most people think out there. I think he's a pretty tough guy, and he could survive it. It's his cardio that I think is, again, the biggest flaw in his game. And that is not a good thing, especially with a guy like Anderson that pushes the high pace. I think in round 1, what we're going to see is a pretty competitive battle. And I think Anderson's going to have to be careful and cautious in round 1 because Villante is going to be a little dangerous, and it's not going to be an easy guy to control or even outpoint in round 1. But as the fight carries on, I think we'll see Anderson slowly starting to find his groove and take over and pretty much grind out Villante along the way, outpoint him possibly a little bit on the feet, because Villante, when he starts getting tired too, he doesn't start throwing as much. So Villante's key to victory here is showing up in the best shape of his life and proving all of us wrong, that he can definitely fight against the higher level guys at 205 and get the W here. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen. So I got to side with Anderson. I just think, again, I trust him a little bit more as far as, I mean, skill set, they're going to match up relatively well, but Anderson's cardio, I think his freshness, his overall, I think, confidence in where he's at of his career at this point is going to probably come through for him, and he's going to get another solid win over his resume, because Villante is not an easy out despite all the flaws I just mentioned. So my official pick is going to be Anderson getting the nod over Villante, probably by decision.
And I expect Anderson to perform very well in this fight. Anderson has switched over his training. He now trains full-time over at Hendo Gracie's gym with Frankie Edgar. It looks like he is spending a lot of time with Mark Henry, improving his striking technique. They've taken him under his wing there as one of their pet projects. And he has a very diverse skill set. Obviously, he has the really good, strong wrestling base to fall back on, but he is rapidly improving every other facet of his game. He is still a little bit raw, especially you saw that in his last performance against Justin Jones, but there's no telling just how much he's going to be improving heading into this fight, especially at 25 years old, and if he's continues to live up to that Beastin 25-8 moniker of his. Villante, on the other hand, he does train out of a great gym, Sarah Longo, but it hasn't quite translated into a really good results. He is 2-2 in his UFC career so far. He does have a couple wins over not so great opposition. I mean, Sean O'Connell and Cody Donovan are not tip-top guys in the light heavyweight division. They're pretty bottom of the barrel. And every time he stepped in there against somebody that was a little bit further up the food chain, Fabio Maldonado, Ovince and Preux, he ended up getting outworked. So it is a concern. You go back to even his Strikeforce days. He did finish strong with 3 wins, but again, Chad Griggs in his debut, and then also the fight against Lorenz Larkin, who is a welterweight now, where he lost a decision. So Villante just doesn't quite have that ability to be competitive with the top guys in the light heavyweight division. Now, Corey Anderson isn't one of those top guys yet. He could become one someday. Maybe if he goes out there and takes care of business against Villante, he could be a top 15 guy. Now, Villante, the biggest advantage in this fight for me is his pure power. He does have some really good punching power. And if he connects something on Anderson, he could potentially put him away. We haven't really seen any signs that Anderson has a bad chin, but he hasn't really been hit that hard either. So if Villante is able to get something going early, maybe he could overcome the odds here. But I don't think Villante's wrestling is going to be very much of a help, because Anderson has a really strong wrestling base, and I definitely think that Villante's conditioning is going to be a huge detriment here, because as we've all seen time and time again, he has slowed down pretty bad, as the fight wears on. Basically by about the midway point of the second round, he will be running out of steam, and especially with the pace that Anderson pushes, I think that he is going to really try to make Villante get more tired and have his cardio run out even quicker. So I feel like this is absolutely Corey Anderson's fight to lose. As long as he stays out of trouble early in the fight, he should be in pretty good shape. So my pick is Corey Anderson. Now sticking with the light heavyweight division, we have Ovince St. Preux, who is 17-6, taking on Patrick Cummins, who is 7-1. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Up in Cummins minus 140 to come back on OSP even money. And right now, looking over at the line, it's Cummins minus 130 and OSP is plus 110. So again, margins kind of tighten up a little bit. There has been two-way action coming in on this fight. It's a lot of split opinions on this fight, and I understand it. I mean, it is kind of a tough one. You have your typical wrestler versus striker matchup here with Cummins and OSP. So a lot of times you got to favor, I think, the wrestler in those situations because he can be effective with his takedowns and control and top game and whatnot. I think OSP is getting a little bit better, though, as far as his takedown defense goes. I mean, he's faced pretty strong wrestlers now in his career as well. So Cummins, even though stylistically he should be a matchup problem for OSP, I think OSP is going to be ready, and he's going to be able to stifle a lot of what Cummins is throwing at him. But make no mistake, I mean, this is exactly what the game plan is going to be for Pat Cummins. He's going to want to take this fight to the ground. And once he's on the ground, I'll tell you what, I was pretty impressed with his ability to maintain top control, get out of some iffy situations as far as, when people are threatening off their back with subs or whatnot. Cummins stayed calm. He was able to, to weather the storm a little bit. And his fight IQ is really smart, especially on the ground. But the problem here, matchup-wise, is if OSP is able to stuff those takedowns and keep the fight upright, OSP is going to have a huge advantage on the feet. I mean, just in pure reach, OSP is going to have an advantage. He's also a southpaw. And along with that, I mean, just pure striking. I mean, OSP continues to, I think, evolve as a fighter and get better each time we see him. So he's going to have confidence coming into this fight as well. Obviously OSP just coming in off of that impressive win over Shogun. That's going to actually, I think, elevate his game to a whole nother level. But stylistically, this is an interesting matchup because it is going to be Cummins, I think, by decision, or is OSP going to finish Cummins along the way? So I could see both happening. I'm going to lean towards OSP a little bit more because I just don't trust Cummins enough as far as his chin goes, as far as his striking goes. I mean, he is very flawed on the feet, no doubt about it. So he's going to have to really dominate the entire 3 rounds, I think, to on the ground to get the W here. And if there's any chance at all OSP keeps this fight upward, I think Cummins is going to be in trouble. So my official pick is going to be OSP. It is a tough one. I've been going back and forth a little bit on this fight. It's hard to bet against a strong wrestler like Cummins, or even pick, I'm saying, against a strong wrestler like Cummins. But I think OSP's improved enough that he's going to give Cummins some problems here. So I am going to slightly lean towards OSP in this spot.
Patrick Cummins, while he does have really good wrestling, his wrestling for MMA isn't quite as dangerous. We've seen Ovince St. Preux have a little bit of trouble against some top control guys in the past. He was out-wrestled by Gegard Mousasi in one of his last Strikeforce fights, and then in his first main event against Ryan Bader, he did get out-wrestled for 4 of the 5 rounds. So that is definitely a concern. But when you look at it, Ryan Bader has a lot better transition fighting in MMA. He's a lot more experienced. He can strike and then switch to the grappling. He has very fluid transitions. Patrick Cummins does not have that. Patrick Cummins is not much of a striker whatsoever on the feet, and then he just launches forward and tries to take you down. And I think those are the type of takedowns that Ovince St. Preux should have no problem defending. St. Preux on the feet, while he's not the most technical guy in the world, he has a lot of power, and he's difficult to deal with. He is a southpaw, so he comes in with some heavy strikes, especially that heavy left hook. You saw what happened against Shogun when he put him down with 1 strike. And he also has some pretty dangerous kicks, although I don't know how many of those he's going to want to throw against Cummins due to the wrestling of Cummins. On the ground, if Cummins can get St. Preux on his back, he's probably going to be in pretty good shape. St. Preux is not great at defending off of his back. He's not great at getting back to his feet easily. So Cummins could just be heavy and grind this out if he's able to get early takedowns at the beginning of rounds. But a part of me really sees Ovince St. Preux piecing Cummins up a little bit on the feet, because if Cummins has to shoot in for those takedowns from far away, it's going to be really difficult for him to actually connect with them. So this is all going to come down to Ovince St. Preux's footwork. If he can stay on the outside, work over those strikes, punish Cummins when he tries to come in, he's going to be in really good shape. He could definitely knock Cummins out. If he can't do that, if he starts getting backed into the fence, starts making some very poor tactical decisions, and then starts to run out of gas by the third round, Pat Cummins could win a decision here, maybe even, crazy enough, get a TKO from top control ground and pound. But in my opinion, overall, Ovince St. Preux is just by far the better, more well-rounded fighter, and I think he stays off of his back long enough to knock Pat Cummins out. So I think there's going to be a bit of a reality check for Pat Cummins, and I think Ovince St. Preux comes through with flying colors. So my pick is OSP. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, this is another close one, and in this case, it's because the styles are definitely very much contrasting, and clearly it's a striker-grappler matchup here. As you guys have pointed out, OSP has all the advantages on the feet. He is the hardest hitter on the entire card, 12% knockdown rate. He scored 5 knockdowns to date, coming off the very impressive win. And that was a type of fight over Shogun that was made for him. Shogun is a guy who's willing to stand and trade, but he's vulnerable to knockdowns. He can be knocked out. And OSP, pretty durable on his feet, hasn't really been knocked out or even wobbled. And so that was made for him. This is not that kind of matchup. Patrick Cummins, certainly not the well-rounded mixed martial artist that Shogun is, but he is very, very good at the one thing he is good at, which is wrestling. And he ragdolled Kyle Kingsbury for 3 rounds and has been just looking very solid on the mat. He attempts takedowns at a very, very high rate. He is very quick to go for it. So he wastes no time, which is what he should be doing here. He shouldn't stand and try to hang with OSP on the feet. OSP's just bigger. He's southpaw. He's just as accurate. Cummins shouldn't waste time. Just go for the takedown. So I think right out of the gates, really the very first round should be very revealing in terms of where this fight is going to spend most of its time. Because if it's on the feet, it's probably going to be an OSP knockout, as you guys pointed out. If it's on the ground, Cummins is probably going to just grind this out and do the same thing each round. Get close the distance, drag him down, get a takedown, and then stay there. And that's been something he's been very good at to date. His ground control share is 95%. So really, he's just been in great control on the ground. OSP's takedown defense, he has faced a lot of takedowns, 42 so far to date. He's defended 64 of them. Now that is slightly above the UFC baseline rate, but I wouldn't say that he has good takedown defense. I just think it's about average. And you're going to need to be better than average when you're facing a guy like Patrick Cummins, who's going to come in fast and furious trying to get those takedowns himself. And he's landed his own at 52%. So if he misses that one, he's going to come right back and try it again. So I can understand why it's tough to take a side here. It is a close matchup. It's, not because they are well matched or even in their styles, but because of there's 2 paths to victory here. OSP on the feet, Cummins on the mat. I personally am going to lend a little bit more to the wrestling credentials of Cummins, but not with high confidence. And I do expect that this is another fight on this card of a lot of even matchups where hopefully the line, well, if the line does move a lot, I would just go the other way because I do think that this is a very close matchup. I just happen to lean a little bit more towards the wrestler.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now this takes us to the main event of the preliminary card. We have a lightweight contest between Jim Miller, who is 24-5 with 1 no contest, taking on short notice replacement Beneil Dariush, who is 10-1. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Up in Dariush, -140, the comeback on Miller, even money. And right now, looking over at 5 dimes, it is Dariush, -175, the comeback on Miller, +155. So more initial action coming in on Dariush. I am surprised by this because obviously, Jim Miller has been one of the best lightweight fighters in the UFC for, the last few years, no doubt about it. He's always been around, the title contenders and always been right there as one of the guys in line or right underneath the top guys in the division too. So he's just so well rounded. The guy has it all. His boxing is a little bit underrated throughout his career. So he's got a solid stand-up game. Nothing crazy as far as danger goes, but he's got a little bit of underrated power to go along with it. He has a southpaw. And not just that, I mean, his wrestling's solid. His takedown defense overall has been solid. His jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. I mean, he submitted people that really, I mean, just scratch your head at some of the subs that this guy's got. That's how good Miller is overall. But the problem with this matchup is, and I think why most people are going the other way with Dariush here, I do think that we're finally seeing a little bit of a decline spot in Miller. I mean, he's only 31 years old, but again, fight years, I think he's beyond that. And if you look at recently some of his fights, I mean, obviously the Cerrone loss isn't that bad, and he's been on a nice little streak. Besides that, well, Pat Healy did end up beating him. Now it's a no contest, but that being said, he's been on a decent streak. But if you look at his Nate Diaz loss, that sticks out in my head as well. So in my opinion, Miller's not what he used to be when, a few years ago, actually. He's kind of hit that decline spot, and he hasn't performed at the top of his game like he should, or that we all expect him to. And Dariush, on the other hand, has been phenomenal lately. I mean, I've been probably one of the guys originally when he first made his UFC debut to underestimate him a little bit. But, I mean, minus that Nijum TKO loss, which was a little bit surprising, especially at this point, he's been impressive. I mean, he's weathered some early storms throughout his career on the feet. He's been put in some bad spots. He showed the heart and the fight IQ to hang in there and then turn things around and get a win over a guy like, for example, Tony Martin. And then, of course, his impressive performance against Ferreira, and then that outstanding win over Cruikshank, which I think got a lot of people really noticing Dariush and really recognizing how good this guy is overall, because Dariush is another one of these guys. I just was talking about Miller, how complete of a fighter he is. Dariush is a very complete fighter as well, and he continues to improve. He's only 25 years old. He's a southpaw as well. He's training obviously at a good camp with King's MMA and those guys over there. But Dariush, I mean, on the ground, he's a threat to deal with. I mean, he's got underrated wrestling. From top position, he's very effective. He's got a great jiu-jitsu game. Even if you put this guy on his back, you can be in some danger, no doubt about it. And then on the feet, he continues to impress. He continues to get better. I mean, he's dangerous in all aspects of the game. He could beat you with his legs. He could beat you with his hands. So I think he's an effective finisher standing, and he's an effective finisher on the ground. And at this stage in Miller's career, this is not the type of guy you want to see. So I know a lot of the early action coming in on Dariush, which again was a little bit surprising to me because Miller usually gets a lot of respect. But the line has come back down a little bit, and more action is coming in as of recent on Miller here. So the line, we could continue to see some movement up and down a little bit on this fight. But that being said, I do side with Dariush here. I think that Dariush is the better fighter, at least at this point of his career, at this stage here. I think that we're going to maybe see a repeat performance of Miller's fight with Diaz. I think Dariush is going to be a tough guy to control in the cage, and I think he's going to be the more dangerous fighter on the feet. I think we could even possibly see Dariush submitting Miller. I was talking about how good Miller's jiu-jitsu game is, and that's no doubt about that. But again, he can be subbed, and I think that Dariush is dangerous enough to possibly finish him there as well. So Dariush can knock him out. Dariush can sub him. I think if it hits the scorecards, it's going to be a really competitive, close fight, but Dariush can win a decision as well. So I really think you got to side with Dariush in this fight. Much respect to Miller, but I think he is going to lose this fight.
And looking at this fight, Jim Miller does have a history of being a bit of a prospect killer. I mean, you look back all the way back when Charles Oliveira was super hyped and Miller tapped him out with a leg lock. And then more recently, Yancy Medeiros, Miller was able to finish him with a submission. So he does have some really solid submission ability, above average. I mean, he is a black belt for a reason. Very, very solid technical grappler. But at this point in his career, I think a lot of things are starting to catch up to him. I know he's only 31, but that is old 31. I mean, he's fought, I think, 19 times, or this is his 19th fight in the UFC. He is a very grizzled veteran at this point. He's taken a lot of damage in his career. He's been in a lot of wars. I mean, at one point, he was the guy that they could count on to take a fight at any moment's notice. He would step in and give the guy a war. He was known for going to decisions if he did lose. But more recently, you look at it, and he started to get finished a little more. He got submitted by Nate Diaz. He got knocked out by Donald Cerrone. So I think as he's gotten a little older, a little bit more experienced, and has started to take more damage and has it added up, Jim Miller has really started to get into a little bit of trouble with his MMA career. So I think he is on a bit of a decline. He does have good boxing. He has that great ground game, but his development has stagnated. And he doesn't even train at AMA Fight Club anymore. He kind of owns his own gym. He's kind of, looking at it, reading some interviews, he's been planning for his post-fight career a little bit more. And that's never a good sign when you expect a guy to come in there against a really talented up-and-comer like Dariush. Now, looking at Dariush, 6 years younger, has taken way less damage throughout his career, and I have completely disrespected this guy as he has been on his rise. I thought Charlie Brennan was going to beat him in his UFC debut. So, looking at him now, and he has just gotten drastically better every time we've seen him. He has put in some really good time at King's MMA with Rafael Cordeiro. And I think what's really helped him is the work he's done with training partner, the current UFC lightweight champion, Rafael dos Anjos. And he has really, really gotten a lot better overall. He is a southpaw, as Nick mentioned. His body kicks are nasty. I was not expecting him to outkick Darren Cruikshank in his last fight, but he did. He actually forced Cruikshank to shoot in for takedowns because he was outstriking him. And I did not expect to see that rapid development in his striking, but it is there. So on the feet, I actually think Dariush is the better overall striker at this point, unless Miller can just make this fight an ugly, up-close and personal brawl. At distance, Dariush is definitely going to be very dangerous. On the ground, even though Jim Miller is spectacular, I think Dariush is a little bit better. Dariush is, world champion level jiu-jitsu, and he is going to put Miller in some bad spots. I think Dariush's wrestling is just as good as Miller's, so he has to be a little bit cautious because Miller is tricky, but I think on the ground, Dariush has a slight advantage, if not it just being a complete wash. So you look at it overall, I think Dariush is just the more well-rounded, more dangerous fighter in more areas. And especially when you look at their career trajectories, this seems like a perfect spot for Beneil Dariush to get that signature win and really start making moves in the lightweight division. So I've finally given Beneil Dariush the respect he deserves, and I'm going to pick him to go out there and not just beat Jim Miller, but I think beat him impressively. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, you're right. Jim Miller has been around a long time. 183 minutes in the cage logged for that guy. And I do think that does take a toll. He's looked just a little bit slower more recently. His numbers are starting to really average out. It's definitely a great career he's been in against top level talent, but nothing really jumps off the page. As a striker, he's been arguably very average, maybe even slightly below average. And as a grappler, he's had some awesome submissions, but he's actually, his wrestling stats are average. Again, his takedown accuracy is average. His takedown defense is maybe below average. And Beneil Dariush, he wasn't supposed to be a striker. He's supposed to be a grappling specialist. And yet he came out in his last fight. And you're right. He completely was not just hanging with Darren Cruikshank. He had him backing up and he was taking it to him and getting the better of the striking exchanges. That's what impressed me most. So I think if these guys stand in trade, Dariush is probably going to be the one getting the harder shots, landing the harder shots. Now Dariush's knockdown rate is higher. His chin rating is bad though. So he's been dropped twice himself. He did have that loss against Nijem a while back. So there is some hit or miss here. I am leaning more towards Dariush. I just think as good as he looked against Cruikshank, he is able to win a fight against someone at their own strength. And that's an impressive thing to do. And his grappling credentials should be just as good as Miller's here. So I think there's enough of a lean towards Dariush, that this guy's kind of the new blood. He's much younger and it'll be a southpaw and southpaw fight. But Dariush is a little bit bigger. However, he filled out that weight very well. He packs on some pounds. So everything's coming together for this guy. And this is an excellent test because Miller is very, very well rounded. He's got the triple threat, black belt in BJJ, black belt in Taekwondo, and Division I wrestler. And at the same time, he's kind of the old school guy. Not really exceptional in any way, just solid all around. And so I think Dariush will just be a little bit more dangerous.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now, this takes us to the first fight on the main card, and it's a women's strawweight contest between Felice Herrig, who is 10-5, and Paige VanZant, who is 4-1. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Up in VanZant, minus 175 to come back on Herrig, plus 135. And right now, it is minus 140 for VanZant, plus 120 for Herrig. So dog dropped a little bit. Margins have tightened up a little bit as well, but more support coming in on Herrig over VanZant, which again, I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, considering that VanZant hype is through the roof right now. I mean, both these girls, let's not make a mistake here, are extremely popular. I mean, amongst the MMA fans, they love Herrig. Both of these ladies are definitely pleasant to look at. So, I mean, they have popularity, they have followings behind them as well. But VanZant has been more of the focus, I think, from a lot of the fans. I mean, especially since her impressive debut win in the UFC as well. I mean, there's just a hype train around her. A lot of people were actually comparing her to Ronda Rousey. Maybe not bar submissions, I'm not saying that, but as far as popularity and eventual like star power goes in 115, I don't think that's a fair assessment. But that being said, I have heard that comparison. I mean, I'm sure most of you guys have as well. So, Paige VanZant, definitely a popular fighter, a pretty good fighter. But this matchup with Herrig is going to be interesting because I think that they match up stylistically relatively well, and it's going to be a close fight. So for all the people that have been coming in on Herrig, I understand why. I mean, it's probably a dog or pass situation as far as betting goes. But I do expect this to be a very competitive battle. I know Herrig, in my opinion, is probably going to have the ground edge. She should have, as far as a little bit more power, being able to take the fight to the floor. VanZant's takedown defense is definitely a little bit questionable, to say the least. But once you get VanZant on her back, she is not easy to control and keep down there. She transitions well, has some decent reversals as well. Herrig does at times, even though she does have pretty good jiu-jitsu, wrestling or grappling overall solid, she does at times let herself get put in bad spots or let people, get out of good situations that she's in and kind of counter things and then get back to the realm. And I think that that's what we're going to see here. VanZant, I think, overall pushes a higher pace. I think VanZant is going to look to keep this fight upright, obviously. Even on the feet, it's going to be close. I think Herrig is a very talented striker in her own right. But I think VanZant, I mean, the work she did against Curran up against the cage and her aggression, with that type of attitude and that type of pace, I think that she's going to be able to be effective against Herrig. So I think it's a coin flip type of fight, honestly. But I'm going to slightly lean towards VanZant. I know I'm going against the grain. Pretty much everybody thinks that Herrig's going to win this fight from what I gather thus far. And that's a very possible thing. I mean, Herrig is definitely game. And again, stylistically for Herrig, this is a great fight and this is a winnable fight for her. But I do think if you look at the improvement levels from both of them, pre-UFC, if you look at the footage on VanZant and then you look at what she was able to accomplish against Curran, which I really think that Curran is a very underrated, talented fighter. So that was a more of a solid win than I think most people realize for VanZant. If you look at her improvement level, though, from tape to what she's showed us thus far, which isn't a lot yet, granted, but I think VanZant is improving at a rapid pace. She's going back and she's training with the Alpha Male camp as well, and that's a great camp for, I mean, I think females or any of the lighter weight classes, we all know that that's one of the top camps that you can train at. So I think that training is going to help her as well prepare for Herrig's ground game and some of the advantages that Herrig might have in this fight. And I think VanZant's going to be ready. She's going to have the attitude and the proper training behind her. So I think it's going to be a close fight, but I'm going to slightly lean towards VanZant to pull off the W here. I think she wins by a very competitive but close decision.
And I'm going to disagree here. I'm going to be one of those people that's on the side of Felice Herrig. Looking at the fight, obviously there are some very interesting things, especially with the style of striking that both girls present. Herrig is a little bit better in open space. She does come from that kickboxing background, so she is, I think, the stronger overall striker in terms of power and technique. VanZant, on the other hand, is just all about swarming pressure. She likes to move forward and just throw bombs, not much technique behind them whatsoever, and then it's all about closing the distance and then pressuring her opponent into the fence, where she is just crazy. She has really good dirty boxing, and she just keeps throwing strikes, and she is a cardio machine. So if you look at that UFC debut against Kailin Curran, she just kept going and going and going like a little Energizer bunny. Didn't mind eating shots, didn't mind getting thrown around on her head, didn't mind getting taken down, just kept going and going and going and just wore her down, and then eventually got the TKO in the third round when Curran just couldn't keep up with the pace anymore. That's something she's probably going to want to try to do to Felice Herrig, because in open space, Herrig is going to be landing the more punishing blows, and she could just outwork Herrig on the feet by keeping her on her back feet, backed up against the fence. Now, one thing she's going to have to be concerned about is if Felice Herrig is able to take her down, because VanZant had terrible takedown defense in her UFC debut, and Kaylin Curran isn't even that good of an offensive wrestler. She just landed trips, she landed throats, she landed regular wrestling takedowns, and VanZant every single time got stuck on her back. Although, to her credit, she did work some sweeps, she worked transitions, she got back up over time, but she did get stuck there, and she, even when she was on her back, she was throwing strikes. So, for this fight, I think it's going to come down to VanZant's pressure against Herrig's attempts to get the fight to the ground and gain top position, or Herrig trying to work her over in open space. VanZant did have trouble when she faced somebody with really good footwork that ignored her pressure, like Tecia Torres in Invicta. Torres just lit her up. But again, that was a long time ago, and VanZant has shown rapid improvement. Speaking of improvement, though, Felice Herrig's ground game took a huge step up in her last fight against Lisa Ellis. I really thought that Ellis would be able to out-wrestle her, win some of the scrambles on the ground, get top position. But every single time Ellis tried to get anything going on the ground, Herrig was there with submission attempts, with sweeps, with transitions, and she would win the scrambles. And eventually she did get that second round submission. So I was very impressed with the improvements in Felice Herrig's ground game. And I think she could actually get top position and be a little bit better on the ground than Paige VanZant. One thing, as Nick mentioned, is to keep an eye on is that VanZant started training with Team Alpha Male again. They had a bit of a falling out when she was having a bit of issues, personal issues, but she's back there again. And I think that they're giving her a lot of attention, really helping her develop her game. So the room for growth is definitely more with Paige VanZant, but I'm a little worried that she hasn't quite developed enough that she's going to come in here and win this fight. So I think this is Felice Herrig's fight to lose. I think takedowns are going to be very important, and I think top control, ground and pound, and submission attempts from Herrig are going to be the deciding factor. So I'm going to pick Felice Herrig, but I'm not crazy confident in it. All right, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, the first caveat is that the numbers are pretty limited here. I mean, we're talking less than one fight for both girls to look at, but there was a couple points that I just wanted to throw into the mix because it is a fairly even fight and people have been coming in on both sides. So first of all, when it comes to age, keep in mind that the reason older fighters don't perform as well is usually because of damage that they take over time. In the women's strawweight division, that is not going to be a big issue. There's a 9-year age difference right here. But you know, these girls aren't going to knock each other out with one punch. And in fact, in this case, age might actually be more of an advantage for these women because Herrig has had more time simply to grow into her body. And you take one look at her and she is absolutely ripped. She is going to be the stronger fighter in this matchup. Paige VanZant, possibly still growing. She's only 21 years old, hasn't had a lot of time to fill out and get that strength that she might need to handle just the physicality of an MMA fight with someone like Herrig. Now, point number 2 is the takedowns. You mentioned Herrig's takedowns, VanZant's takedowns. They both won their fights on the ground, but Paige VanZant was taken down 5 times in the first 2 rounds of her fight. She did get some reversals, and she eventually just clearly was in better shape, cardio-wise. But she got taken down very easily. She was unable to defend any takedowns. And Felice Herrig was quick to attempt a takedown. She actually was taken down a few times on her own side, but for the most part, she was in control most of that fight, whereas Paige VanZant was not until the end. So for that reason, I do think that Herrig has a couple of advantages here. And as an underdog, that always makes me raise an eyebrow. So it's super close, and obviously a lot of uncertainty just based on the fact that we don't have a lot of data to look at. We only have one UFC level fight to look at, but you know, they do have a history outside the UFC. So there is enough to make me lean towards Felice Herrig for an upset. Although again, on a card of even matchups, the lines will probably stay pretty close.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now moving up to the featherweight division, we have Cub Swanson, who is 21-6, taking on Max Holloway, who is 12-3. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I've been Swanson minus 190 to come back on Holloway plus 150. And right now the line has dropped. It's minus 145 for Swanson. The comeback on Holloway is plus 125. And another spot I'm relatively surprised about. I know Holloway, both these guys get a tremendous amount of respect and popularity amongst, again, the UFC diehards and some of the bettors out there as well. But Swanson was at that championship level, it's kind of towards the top of his game for sure. And he's got an overall better skill set, I think, than Holloway, but styles make fights. And again, I think it is a dog or pass situation. So the early action, a little bit more coming in on Holloway, I think is justified. And this is going to be a heck of a fight. Swanson has proven time and time again that, talk about improvement. I was just basically talking about it earlier with other people. And I think that Cub Swanson is one of those guys you could really also say the same thing about. What he's been able to do, minus the last fight against Edgar, before that run that he went on is unbelievable. And it's all due to hard work that he's put in the gym. And he's just a better version of himself, as of late than he has been early on in his career. And he's always been a solid fighter, don't get me wrong, but still, I think fight IQ, I think overall his striking aggression, his precision, I think, his ability to scramble and stay off his back, minus again against a guy like Frankie Edgar in most cases, and to control the wrestling aspect of the fight has done really well for Swanson. So his confidence was at an all-time high. Now it's going to take a little bit of a setback though. That loss to Edgar was definitely eye-opening, I think, for Swanson as well. So, he's going to be game. He's going to try to regroup and get the W against a very game Holloway here, but it's going to be tough. Because if you look at Holloway again, he's a young guy. Swanson's 31 years old where Holloway is 23. So I think there is at this point, at this stage of his career, more upside for Holloway. He's going to continue to improve. I think we're going to see a lot of the same things that I was just mentioning about Swanson happen to Holloway as well. He's going to make a run towards the title 145 eventually, and this is a big step towards that. I think Holloway's takedown defense overall is good enough to maintain this fight upright. He is going to have a little bit of a reach advantage. Actually, it's going to be close. It's going to be, I believe, both of them have about a 70-inch reach advantage, but height, Holloway is going to have a little bit there. And I think as far as overall pace, Holloway pushes a faster or a much more of a heavier pace on the feet. Swanson likes to kind of sit back and pick his shots a little bit more, and he is a very precise and powerful puncher. Holloway likes to, again, put the pressure on a little bit more, and he's more strike heavy for sure in his attack. Holloway also has some power. So I think this fight's basically going to come down to who can control the cage and who's going to utilize their striking better. And I think that is going to probably be Holloway in this spot here. I think that, again, Swanson might be the more complete fighter overall. I still think there's some flaws in Holloway's game. I know his takedown defense is actually pretty solid, but he has been put on his back and he's been controlled against great wrestlers, great grapplers. Again, you could say kind of the same thing about Swanson as well, but Holloway is getting better. He's improving his submission game overall. But there's still an advantage, I think, overall to Swanson there on the ground as well. But on the feet and where it should take place for the most part, I think it's going to be a war. It's going to be a very competitive matchup back and forth, almost like a chess match. But I think it's a fight that Holloway is going to be prepared for. He's going to be ready for it. And I think it's kind of almost a lose-lose situation for Swanson because, again, he's been towards the top of the division. I think a lot of people are expecting him to come away with a win here. If he gets it, it's going to be, he should have won that fight against Holloway. And there's not as much pressure for Holloway here. Of course, Holloway is coming off again a decent little streak here. Swanson against suffering that loss to Edgar. So I think mentally Holloway is going to be a little bit better off as well and less pressure in this fight. So I am going to pick Holloway. I think, again, it probably does stay standing and Holloway is going to be the busier fighter on the feet. I think effectiveness as far as power goes, I trust Holloway's chin a little bit better as well. Swanson has been knocked out in the past. He's been rocked in other fights as well. So I think Holloway's just a little bit more sound on the feet as far as more dependable. And I think he's going to probably get the biggest win of his career over Swanson here. It is going to be close. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way, but I do think my pick officially is going to be Holloway because I think he can win this fight.
Cub Swanson is a very dangerous fighter. He had a really impressive knockout streak where he was just destroying everyone left and right. But he did start to lose a little bit of momentum as he started getting up to the top of the division, and obviously ran into the freight train that was Frankie Edgar in his last fight. Max Holloway has had a bit of an up and down career in the featherweight division, and then finally looks like he figured it out. Granted, none of those last 5 wins on his current streak are legit top guys. I think his best win's probably Andre Fili during this 5-fight stretch, maybe Cole Miller in his last fight, but I do think that Max Holloway's really started to put it all together. In terms of overall skill set, I would say that Max Holloway is the more voluminous striker. He has the more judge-friendly striking style, while Cub Swanson is slightly more technical on the feet and then does pack more power in terms of one punch, a striking ability. So if you look at this, if this fight stays standing for extended periods of time, I can see Max Holloway doing just enough to eke out the judge's decision unless Cub Swanson lands something really heavy and is able to rock Holloway or drop him. So that's really what it's going to come down to on the feet. If it goes to the ground, I do think that Swanson has the better wrestling. He has a little bit better top control. Holloway doesn't really go for takedowns whatsoever. He basically uses his wrestling in reverse to keep the fight standing and just keep wearing down his opponent. Kind of like Paige VanZant does in terms of the striking, except Holloway has a little bit more power. Holloway, he just keeps going and coming after you until he wears you down and then he finishes you. I mean, he has a really good track record of doing that in his MMA fights. And he is getting more dangerous as he has continued to get some more experience. Now, Cub Swanson is going to be very dangerous. He is 31 years old. That is something to consider. But I do think that at any point in this fight, Cub Swanson could land something really heavy and hurt Holloway, even though Holloway's never been rocked or dropped in a fight before, at least to my memory. So that's something that Holloway's always going to have to be cautious about because he is kind of hittable. He doesn't have the greatest striking defense, and he's willing to eat a shot as long as he's able to land 3 or 4 more. So I think that at some point in this fight, Cub Swanson is going to hurt Holloway or land something really heavy, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I see Max Holloway outworking Cub Swanson and wearing him down just like Frankie Edgar did, except he's going to do it on the feet. So I'm going to pick Max Holloway. You got to be careful about Cub Swanson's power, but I think he can do enough to sway the judges or maybe just wear Swanson down enough to get a late TKO. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
The theme continues that we have another close matchup here, and in this one, it's because they look almost identical on paper. When I first put these guys side to side, pretty impressively that they have almost identical knockdown power, accuracy, defense, chin rating. They like to stay on their feet. They're not quick to attempt a lot of takedowns. They look very, very similar on paper. Now, there are a few subtle differences. First, you pointed out Cub Swanson is the much older fighter. Max Holloway actually has the record for the fastest or youngest fighter to fight 10 times in the UFC. He's still only 23 years old, which is remarkable. In fact, this will only be the second time there's someone on the card that's actually younger than he is, because Paige VanZant is only 21. But in terms of his raw striking pace, you're right. Max Holloway just puts on barn burners. He gets involved in these just frenzied exchanges. He doesn't necessarily outwork his opponents, but he draws them in to the barn burner, and he is landing at much higher accuracy than they are. Basically, he's landing 36% of his head strikes. His opponents are only landing 22%. So he pulls away because he's doing more damage. He's outlanding his opponents and keeping the rate of the fight at a pace where he can actually outperform people. So that's maybe the difference on the feet here. I think I agree with you. If one guy was going to land a one-punch knockout, I think it might be Swanson. I think he throws a little more heat behind his punches. His power share is actually a little bit higher. So he's using his jab less often than Holloway is. I think Holloway just has a more balanced attack, but Swanson throws more power. So there is some give and take here, and I could see how Holloway's rate might simply outwork Swanson, sway the judges, but I do think he's also vulnerable. I mean, here's two guys, featherweights. They have 10 knockdowns between them. That is a lot. And yet, because of just the rate at which they strike and how often they land, their knockdown rate on a per punch basis isn't that high, although it's, maybe arguably slightly above their own division. But if they go toe to toe, I could see either one of these guys finishing it. And in terms of decisions, I think Holloway certainly has the advantage on the feet. Now, on the ground, I think you got to give an edge to Cub Swanson. Max Holloway is not necessarily some guy who's going to go out there and attempt takedowns. He's literally attempted one takedown in his entire UFC career, and he didn't land it. So offensively, he has not done a whole lot with his wrestling. He got put on his back in a few fights. Swanson is not the kind of guy who has used wrestling effectively either, but at least he has attempted some takedowns, and he does tend to land them with decent success. So should he find himself falling behind with Holloway, he could use that to his advantage to even things out, try to steal around on the mat. So for all of these reasons, again, this is another fight where I really expect the line to stay close. Forced to pick, I hate to pick this matchup. I think this is the most even matchup on the card. And I'm reluctant to say, I think Swanson has more finishing potential, and I think Holloway has the ability to win this on his feet with a decision. And so it's a coin flip type fight. I think I might lean a little bit towards Swanson since he's faced higher level opponents for that reason only, but not with confidence, and certainly not something I would lay the juice on.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now, this brings us to the co-main event of the evening. We have a middleweight contest between Jacare Souza, who is 21-3 with 1 no contest, taking on late notice replacement in a rematch, Chris Camozzi, who is 21-9. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
I've been Jacare Souza minus 1050, the comeback in Camozzi plus 550. And right now it's actually minus 1375. The comeback on Camozzi is plus 900. So wasn't high enough. I opened him over 10-1 and it still wasn't high enough. So that being said, I know everybody in the planet is going to parlay Jacare, and I think everybody thinks and agrees that this is pretty much a lock. That's what people's perception is out there. And it's hard to argue it, to be honest with you. I mean, Camozzi, I have a lot of respect for this guy as well. I think that he belongs in the UFC, honestly, and I think he can definitely beat a lot of the guys. I mean, he had a pretty impressive run there for a little while in the UFC as well, and he can continue to win fights at 185, no doubt about it. But as far as the upper tier guys, I'm not sure he's ready for it. And obviously a fighter like Jacare, I mean, they fought in the past, and Jacare took him, I believe, 3 minutes or so to get the W there over Camozzi. And I don't think we're going to see too much change. I think that, I mean, at this point, I realize what the UFC is doing matchup-wise, but Camozzi was game enough to step up and take this fight on short notice. And I mean, he's a true warrior. So again, much respect for him. But as far as matchup goes, it's hard to believe that he's going to be able to beat Jacare. I think even on the feet these days, Jacare's improved enough that he can outpoint Camozzi on the feet. If it's a standing, I think he's a little bit more powerful as far as the pure knockout power goes as well. But that's not it. I mean, we all know that Jacare's strength is obviously on the ground, and he can submit most people at 185. I mean, just look what he was able to do to Mousasi. And Mousasi isn't, I mean, the same Mousasi that, that we're used to seeing from years ago. Mousasi's put a lot of work in, and he's the best version of himself that we've ever seen, and Jacare was able to dominate him like that. That was very impressive. So I think Jacare is one of these guys, even though he's 35 years old, he's also starting to get better and better. I mean, he's actually at the peak of his career right now. So that's not necessarily a good thing for Camozzi. So I really do understand why everybody's going crazy and adding Jacare in parlays or whatnot. But at the same time, obviously the sports books are going to be pulling for kind of the miraculous upset here for Camozzi to land that one punch and maybe knock out Jacare, because that's going to be his only path to victory. I mean, Jacare has been knocked out a couple times in his career. Even though Camozzi does have a little bit of knockout power, it's still going to be tough for him to land that punch, though. So unless we see something shocking here, I mean, I won't take more time on this fight. It's a mismatch, and Jacare should win this fight more times than not again.
And this is going to be my quickest breakdown ever. Jacare is so much better than Chris Camozzi, it's not even funny. They fought already once before, as Nick mentioned, and Jacare was outworking him on the feet. He out-wrestled him. He out-grappled him once it was on the ground. And then once they did go to the ground, he was toying with him almost on the canvas, and then he locked in an arm triangle choke. And Chris Camozzi literally lasted about 1 second in the arm triangle before his arm went limp and he passed out. So Jacare is just way better than Chris Camozzi. Like, the only chance that Camozzi would have against Jacare is a puncher's chance to knock him out, and Chris Camozzi hasn't really knocked anybody out. He doesn't have a lot of power in his strikes. So this is just a brutal matchup. Major props to Camozzi for just having the balls to reach out and use this as a way to get back in the UFC, because he did go out and win 2 fights after he was released following his 4-fight losing streak. But man, this is just a nightmare, brutal, terrible matchup for him. Jacare is going to eat him for lunch, and I think it's going to end very quickly. So I'm picking Jacare, not wasting any more time on it. I think this one's pretty obvious. All right, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, they agree completely. You look down the advantages, and it is just one-sided most of the way down. There's a couple areas where Camozzi shows better jab accuracy. He strikes at a high pace. That's been he's been a little bit more aggressive on his feet, whereas Souza holds back a bit. But everywhere else, Souza has an advantage. Does Camozzi have a puncher's chance? Not really. He's never scored a knockdown in his entire UFC career, and his accuracy isn't all that great. And that's because he tends to use a lot of volume in his strikes. He doesn't throw a lot of power strikes. He uses a lot of jabs, combinations. It's more about volume. Now, on the ground, here's a guy, Chris Camozzi. He has never landed a takedown in his UFC career. Certainly not going to land one here against Souza. He doesn't want to go to the ground, but can he defend it? Well, his takedown defense is about average. And his share of ground time in control is 5%. Okay, average would be 50-50. This guy has almost never been in a position of control on the ground. He's been put on his back 95% of the time or been controlled otherwise. So it is a clean sweep in the grappling department on the uber tail of the tape here. So it's just a matter of when. The only way this fight is bettable is with an angle. Round one, take the under, maybe use Souza inside the distance as a prop play for a little bit better value. But obviously at 13-1, 14-1, you can't play Souza straight up. You never know if he's injured walking in there. But at least in a fair fight, both guys healthy, I don't see how Camozzi has a chance.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now this brings us to the main event of the evening, which is also in the middleweight division. We have Lyoto Machida, who is 22-5, taking on Luke Rockhold, who is 13-2. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I opened Rockhold minus 140, the comeback of Machida, even money. And right now, looking over the line, it's minus 150 for Rockhold. The comeback of Machida is plus 130. So line margins, again, have tightened up a little bit. And the line's been holding steady. This is a tough fight to predict. I mean, both these guys are the best, really outside of the champion, Weidman. I mean, they're up there as far as contenders go, no doubt about it. The winner of this does deserve a title shot. That's how close they are to the championship. And of course, Machida has actually fought for the 185 title. We know that as well. So, these are two of the best you're going to get, and they match up stylistically pretty well because, of course, Machida, is more of your karate-based striker, but he's, done so much in the UFC, being the former, light heavyweight champion. He's a well-rounded guy in his own right. He's got great takedown defense overall. And, the ability to translate or convert his karate to have success in MMA like he has been amazing. It's been phenomenal. He's a true sniper. He's got some obviously devastating knockout power to go along with it too. His fight IQ is great. His conditioning is great. There's not many bad things at all you can say about Machida. He's one of the best fighters, honestly, that I've seen in a long time as far as overall skill set and as far as ability to watch him fight and do what he does best. Fight IQ, everything. So Machida's game, and you can say a lot of the same things about Rockhold. It's impressive. Rockhold's actually a former Strikeforce champion at 185 as well. The guy continues to improve by leaps and bounds. If you look at what Rockhold's been able to accomplish recently, who's done what he's done to Philippou, to Bosch, to Bisping even? He's ran right through those guys, and those guys are all maybe not championship caliber guys, but at the same time, they're all very high level fighters that have had a great deal of success in the UFC and at 185. So this is, Rockhold, I think at his best. He's peaking right now. He's training at a good camp as well. Obviously, we know that with AKA. And I think he's such a good, well-rounded fighter that he's going to present some problems for Machida, no doubt about that as well. So this is a great fight. This is a true kind of coin flip type of fight. I do slightly give some advantages to Rockhold, though, because I do think he's a little bit more of the complete fighter. Rockhold has underrated wrestling, and then once he does get the fight to the floor, if he's able to, his submission game is ridiculous. It's really underrated as well. He's able to finish people that you wouldn't think he would be. So he's that kind of special fighter on the ground. Stand-up wise, he's going to have a little bit of reach over Machida. He's going to have, I believe, around 3 inches. Both of them are southpaws. So that's an interesting factor in here as well. But I think Rockhold's going to probably end up pushing a little bit of a higher pace. Machida, against most wrestlers, he tends to backpedal, use his angles, and have some success, no doubt about it. But as far as the scorecards go, a lot of times, I mean, he's been involved in some controversial decision losses. I mean, if you look back at his fight, honestly, against a guy even like Rampage, he shouldn't have lost that fight. He won that fight, but the judges kind of scored it to Rampage. I know that's a few fights back, but I'm saying even against Phil Davis, that's another controversial loss that he had. But those guys are a little bit more aggressive at times than Rockhold is. So I think Rockhold's going to have to follow his game plan, which is going to be pretty smart because Rockhold is a very intelligent fighter. The camp itself is going to come up with a good game plan. They realize that they're going to have to push a little bit of a pace against Machida as well. He's going to have to stay out of trouble, but I think he's not going to have easy time getting a Machida to the floor and dominating him, controlling him on the ground. But at times, I think he can make it interesting, especially up against a cage. He might be able to get the fight briefly to the floor. And Rockhold doesn't need a lot of room to work once he does get the fight to the floor. So Machida's going to have to be cautious with Rockhold's submission game. And I think, again, Rockhold's going to be a little bit more aggressive, and it could sway the judges his way overall. But this is definitely a tough fight. I think that I could see Machida leaning that precise knockout blow to end things for Rockhold, or I could see Rockhold kind of grinding Machida out a little bit and, again, performing well, maybe outpointing him on the feet a little bit as well, pushing a higher pace, and maybe even finding a sub if it does get to the ground and Machida gets in a bad spot. So awesome fight. I mean, this is one of my favorite fights all year so far because both of them are such quality, and it's really a true hard fight to pick, but I am leaning a little bit towards Rockhold at this point. I think he's probably going to come away with the decision win. So again, tough fight, but I slightly lean towards Rockhold.
This is a really tough fight. Probably the toughest one on the card for me to really pick. Luke Rockhold's a little bit younger than Machida. Machida's 36, Rockhold's 30. Both guys train out of elite gyms, with Rockhold out of AKA, Machida Blackhouse. Both guys southpaws. Both guys really solid overall strikers. Both guys pretty good finishers. So it's very tough to see who can eke out the big advantages. You look at Rockhold, he is a little longer, a little taller, so I think he also punches with a little bit more pure power with kicks and punches combined. But when you look at Machida, he is more technical, in my opinion. He's a little bit more explosive. He can dart forward and land those strikes without getting hit back. And his kick against CB Holloway was just downright disgusting. How quickly he was able to throw it and have it connect to the body and just crumple Holloway into a heap and finish the fight in the first round. Rockhold is very dangerous too. I mean, he's finished a fight with a body kick. Look at his fight against Costa Philippou. So these guys both are very, very dangerous with their kicks. I think that Machida is a little bit more dangerous on the feet just because he mixes in so many feints and he's so tricky and he's so elusive, and he's able to just explode forward and catch you when you don't see it coming, and he has some really nice counters, so he plays into it when people are aggressive against him. So I do think that if Rockhold tries to imitate the game plan from Chris Weidman, he could get himself in a little bit of trouble because he is more hittable. And if Machida hits you with one of those sneaky strikes that you don't see coming, Rockhold could get himself, knocked out, because he has been knocked out by Vitor Belfort. He was rocked by Jacare in their title fight. So I could see Machida putting him away on the feet, but hell, I could see Rockhold putting away Machida on the feet, because if he connects with one of those big head kicks or a big punch, Machida has been knocked out by Shogun. He got rocked by John Jones. So, these guys both are in a bit of a similar state in terms of chin strength, power, a little bit of everything. Even on the ground, I would actually say that Rockhold has a little bit more of a dangerous ground game. He's submitted more people in his MMA career, at least in terms of the high-level strike force in UFC. And hell, look at that performance against Tim Boetsch, where he locked in that inverted triangle and then went for the Kimura. I mean, he had him in a world of trouble. And then Michael Bisping, when he rocked him with the head kick, he finished him with the guillotine choke, immediately dove on it. So I would say that Rockhold has a really good killer instinct. If he hurts Machida, he's going to finish him. You can't say the same thing about Machida, because sometimes he is a little hesitant to really commit 100% to things. But overall, I think the majority of this fight will take place on the feet. You're going to see Rockhold moving forward. So it's going to come down to judges, and Rockhold potentially could sway the judges, but a part of me still believes in that Machida dragon magic. And I think Machida is going to land something real nasty in this fight as Rockhold's wading forward. and I think he's going to put Rockhold away. So my pick is Lyoto Machida. I'm not crazy confident in it, but I'm not giving up on the Dragon just yet. So Lyoto Machida is my pick. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, once again, I can understand why people are torn on this matchup. Yet another close matchup on this card. That's the theme of the card here. And again, this is one where both guys excel on their feet, but in different ways, actually. So Machida, the numbers support exactly what everybody thinks about him. He's an excellent technical striker. He's elusive, hard to hit, but he's very accurate. And while sometimes he lags in pace, he packs a lot of punch. He's got a diverse striking attack, lots of kicks, and the numbers support all of that. Now, Luke Rockhold, he's going to be the longer fighter. Both guys are southpaws, but Rockhold is younger, longer. So with that extra range, he also tends to use extra pace. So in fact, he actually averages more than twice the striking output on his feet than Machida does. He's not as accurate, although he does throw a lot of kicks, which drags down his accuracy a little bit. But arguably he's also got, he does have the better chin. He's not quite as elusive as Machida is, but I think in this case, punch for punch, Rockhold would probably be able to outlast Machida. And in terms of power, Rockhold is right there with Machida. In fact, slightly ahead on a per strike basis. Although Machida is, he's third all time in terms of knockdowns scored in the UFC. So on the feet, very close matchup. But this is one where, both guys pack a lot of punch. I would not be surprised to see either one of them finish it with strikes and just catch the other guy. But more likely, this is going to be a technical duel. I think they're going to respect each other's power. Rockhold is going to be the rangier guy. He's going to be throwing some long range kicks, trying to keep Machida moving backwards so that he can't really get behind his punches and step into his kicks. Because Machida looks great when he's stalking people, but he can't stalk people when they are much bigger than he is. And that was the problem he had with Phil Davis, with Weidman, with John Jones, and those were all losses. So I can understand, Rockhold he's not that big as some of those guys. Here we are at middleweight, which is where Machida should be. And on the ground, Machida, he does have credentials, but Rockhold is simply more dangerous there. He throws up a lot of submissions. He has a good success rate in converting them. And so while I don't really see either one of them shooting for a takedown right out of the gates, I could see Rockhold using some takedowns to win position battles, especially if he closes the distance and they clinch. Rockhold should be throwing some hip throws, get Machida onto the ground, neutralize him there, and win a round. I think this will take some time to develop. I mean, granted, these guys have all the weapons in the world with their hands and their feet, but as good as they are defensively, I think this is going to take some time to develop. And I think round to round, Machida has been a slow starter and he could lose the first few. I think luckily for him, this is a 5-round fight. He actually stepped it up at the end against Weidman. But the numbers do lean ever so slightly towards Rockhold, so he has to be my pick here. But again, this is one where a different outcome would not surprise me at all. This should remain close. And I think, whoever wins this fight is a worthy number 1, number 2 guy in that division. Rockhold obviously could leapfrog Jacare with a win here. Machida already had his chance. So I think, the UFC probably wants to see Rockhold have his shot. And ever so slightly, I would lean that way. But again, Machida is one of the best in the business with his hands and his feet. So, if he pulls off the quote unquote upset here, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
So that'll do it for our full event breakdown for UFC on Fox 15. Part 2 of the Premium Oddscast featuring our premium bets will be out Friday night following the weigh-ins. So stay tuned for that if you're an MMA Oddsbreaker Premium member. If you'd like to become a premium member, just go to MMAOddsbreaker.com and you can sign up at the top right corner of our homepage. If we have a free play to give out, make sure to follow at MMAOB Premium on Twitter because that's where we'll post them first. We can also notify you of our free bets via email if you prefer that method. Just send an email to picks@MMAOddsbreaker.com and we'll add you to our free bet mailing list. Also, feel free to like our Premium Oddscast Facebook page. We post articles, show announcements, and plenty of other information there so you can stay up to date on everything from us if you're interested. Special thanks to our sponsors 5 Dimes and Countermove. Good luck everyone, and hopefully the betting gods are on your side this weekend.